All right. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about delivery semantics, and this is where the acknowledgement and all of the producer and consumer workflow will come into place, and you'll be able to see how things connect. So delivery semantics will describe how often the message might be delivered between the producer and the consumer, especially in the scenario where a failure happens. So Kafka guarantees, like the message guarantee delivery, will depend on when the producers retry to send a message or when the consumer commits the message. So we'll have three types of delivery semantics that we're going to look into today, which is at most once delivery, which I have in here, the at least once delivery, and exactly once delivery. And we're going to look into how they work from the producer side and from the consumer side. So the first one we're going to look into is at most once delivery. And you can see here on this image in the middle that producer sends a message that may be lost. And also when transmitted to the consumer, it also may be lost. So at most once delivery happens when the producer does not retry on failure. So it just sends the message. If it fails, it does not retry. Or the consumer commits offsets before processing. So consumer gets the message from the offset before processing it commits the message. So this is used to prioritize speed, and if something fails, that's fine. So let's look into workflow here from the producer side. The producer will send the record to the broker, and the broker can write it or it may fail. And in this case, the producer will not retry if it doesn't get an acknowledgement. So if it doesn't get an acknowledgement, producer will not retry. From the consumer side, the consumer will pull the records from the broker, and it's going to immediately commit the offsets before processing them. So it can process the records, and let's say crash happens during the processing, but it was already committed. So you might lose that message as well. So that's the at most once delivery. Moving forward, we have at least once delivery, right? Which where the producer will retry if the send of the message fails, and the consumer will commit the offset after processing the message. So that's default in Kafka. It says like it's better to process the information twice than lose data, and the consumer will process a record if it crashes before committing. So the trade-off for this, the downside is we might have duplicate records. And why is that? If you look into the producer side here, the workflow, the producer sends the record, the broker is going to write it and acknowledge it back. And if the producer never receives the acknowledgement due to any network glitch, any crash, the producer will try sending the same record again. So it might send the same record twice. On the consumer side, the consumer might pull the records we're going to process before committing. And then let's say a crash or a restart happens before committing the offset. So when the broker restarts, it's going to repull for the same uncommitted record. So it's going to cause duplication again. All right. And the next one we're going to look into is just a exactly once delivery that combines a depotent producer plus transaction rights plus a careful treatment on the offset commits. This is just guarantees that each record is processed once and only once. Okay. In this case, guarantee message is sent and the message is processed without failures, but just once. So here, from the producer side, producer will going to send a record with a sequence number on the depotent mode, and the broker is going to append it and tracks that sequence. If an acknowledgement gets lost, the producer will retry, but the broker will see the same sequence that he already had, and it's going to ignore that duplicate. On the other hand, in the consumer flow, the consumer will pull for the records, and it's going to process the records inside a transaction. So the combination of the write and the offset commits are atomic. So then it's going to commit the transaction with both the data and the offset stored together. if any crash happens before committing that message, Kafka just rolls back that transaction. Okay? So if we compare those, we'll see like at most once, at least once, and exactly once. The risk of the first one at most once just to lose the message, but that's the fastest one. The at least once, the risk is to have duplication, but it's reliable. And there's like no risks, let's say, for the exactly once, but it's way heavier on the processing and how you set up this. All right. So that's it on the delivery semantics. I hope the acknowledgement and the producer consumer flow now makes more sense.